Shalom. Welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad of Delmar, and we have a very, very special guest with us today, Elise Elbert. Welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Now, I brought you on, even though that we could talk about many things. You're an author of 7 books, am I correct?
5.
5 books. All right, well, 2
7,
more are coming
something,
up.
yeah,
2
yeah.
more. I'm talking about the next 2 that are coming up. In any case, that's very important. We could do a whole show about that. But I wanted to talk about you and your relationship with Israel. And you actually had a very important experience because everybody knows October 7th, that's the date that when the Gazans or Arabs, they came into Israel and killed 1,200 people. Incredible when I say it, but truth is the truth.
Yeah.
And you were there on October 7th. So why don't we start in talking about your experience then, what happened on October 7th?
Well, I was in Tel Aviv with family, and we were visiting for Sukkot, and we were having a beautiful time. You know, it's the best time of year. Well, arguably, it's a really
Yeah.
nice time of year there. And we woke up on Shabbat morning, the 7th, to sirens and rockets exploding in the air, and news of the Hamas atrocities started.
You weren't totally scared or anything?
I was confused at first, and then
Because an American doesn't know from these
Yeah.
things. I think Israelis are more in tune. Hey,
Yeah.
you hear a siren here, it's,
Yeah.
maybe there's a fire here in Bethlehem. They put on sirens. All right, there's some fire going on somewhere. It's not
Yeah.
the biggest deal. But there, it's an emergency.
It wasn't until sort of the second round, like 7 a.m. or 6:37 is when the first round of
In the
sirens.
morning.
And there were rockets exploding over Tel Aviv. You know, you could see in the sky.
You could see these rockets.
Yeah.
How
but
far away were you living from Gaza?
Tel Aviv is probably like less than 2-hour drive
Yes, like
from
nothing.
Gaza. And we were talking about going south to the Otef, to Kibbutz Be'eri, which is very close to
Yeah.
Gaza, and which
That's
was
where the troubles were.
a lot of devastation, destruction, death, torture, horrible things. And that whole day, we were in and out of the shelter, and the atrocities were slowly cut. Like, we didn't know the extent until later. So it was like the numbers kept climbing. Oh, I heard this. Oh, I heard that. My Facebook feed was full of people saying, my son was at the party, I haven't heard from him,
Yeah.
can somebody help? My dog ran off. Like, people just didn't know the scope of...
They usually have one missile here. That's what you hear. All right, everything is
Yeah.
a danger, of course, but a missile here, a missile there. But there's like 1,200 people,
It
plus a
was-
few hundred
yeah.
captives. I mean, they say it was the worst situation since the Holocaust against Jewish people.
Yeah, it was simultaneously like a shock, and also just this horrific sort of like epigenetic deja vu feeling of everybody who was there together, in and out of the shelters, and we were kind of with the same group of people in this hotel for days, and this kind of heaviness set in where it was kind of like, here we go again. Like, it, shocked, but then pretty immediately like, well, it's kind of like, we know this story. We know atrocity. We know horrible violence. Like,
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
this Jewish history, and
so, it was a heavy experience that I don't feel almost a year later now like I have fully been able to come back from. I feel like I left a big piece of my heart there, and
they say that about even soldiers also. It's so traumatic. So you're done fighting, and then they say no, it's going to stay with me my whole life. So again, it's I'm not a psychologist, but I guess any trauma, you just can't just wash it away or
No.
forget about it.
no, it changes you. It's a different life than it was before. My assumptions, the way I saw things, the way I related to other people, my priorities, it sort of changed.
It's interesting because in any experience. You could run away, like a lot of soldiers or people from the Holocaust. They said, my family said, I didn't even know about this. I had a soldier there, American soldier, who liberated Bergen-Belsen, and I talked to him, and his daughter, then he was very old when I talked to him, says, I didn't even know for 40 years.
Can you imagine?
You know, like that. And so you could run away from it, it seems, and hide it, even though nothing's going to be totally removed. Or you can deal with it and be active, and you took the active role about being Jewish and being a Zionist, which is really, I mean, the world tries to separate, I love the Jews, but I don't like Zionism.
Right.
But on the other hand, I think we know that Zionism and Judaism go hand in hand.
It's, and for me it's inseparable, but also for me, like, just the basic definition of Zionism, which is the belief in Israel's right to exist and in the belief of the right of the Jewish people to be able to live peacefully and safely in Israel, and I consider myself a part of that. I want to be able to exist safely and peacefully in Israel. It's fine to be in Bethlehem. I like Bethlehem, New York. Bethlehem, New York.
Not Bethlehem, Israel.
It's
all right.
the irony of coming home to Bethlehem. It's very strange. So it's something I feel like I don't have a choice about. It's not. It's just innate, and what was awakened in me, and long before October 7th. I spent some time in Israel in 1986 with my mom when I was 8 years old, and I felt a profound sense of belonging at 8 years old that I had no context for or way to articulate, but it was like, oh yes, this is my home.
I think that's an important point, because if it cuts like you're an American, you're theoretical for a lot of people. Well, you got this Israel, and you got the soldiers, and they're surrounded by enemies. Why can't they just get along?
Yeah.
That kind of attitude. But if you're there and you see the situation, like you're saying, you're a few hours away. I mean, what American even feels that way?
No.
That we're so protected, thank God, that a few hours away from a military situation. Where there has to be soldiers around, and soldiers are always, you hardly see a soldier, like you say, in the Capital District. I saw one guy in line, how you doing, one soldier, but they're marching. You're not marching, but just walking the street. So you feel the situation constantly. You stay happy, you're positive, but you're fully aware that there's a draft for men and for women, so you can't get away from here again. Guy wants to be a soldier, let him be a soldier. Who's stopping anybody in America? It's a volunteer army. But you don't feel it, they're taking my son away from me. They do feel that, even in peacetime, let alone wartime, when it's super dangerous. But so again, once you see it, it's like seeing is believing. You see the situation.
Yeah, I think some Americans might have an inkling, just the beginnings of an inkling, because what we have here, unfortunately, is mass shootings. We have a ton of gun violence here, and it's a form of terrorism,
Right.
And so Americans in recent years who've become aware that this is a problem, maybe when they go to the movies or the supermarket, maybe have a little bit of a different awareness, now where it's like, like, is everybody okay? Are we going to get, is violence going to be enacted upon us randomly for existing, and that's what Israelis have to live with all the time.
They have check you into the mall. I mean, who goes to the mall? You go to the mall, What's again, big deal. But there it's like even they check you. It's just like the
Everybody's aware.
airport.
Everybody's
I mean, when
like,
you guess I say I'm 29 years old, but I remember you go to the airport, you go and you're in there and you see your relative off. You go to the gate, and now check you out. What am I, a criminal? They got to check you with and every person is like that. So again, you're right. I get a little bit of an inkling, but Israel, like I say, is very, very serious, and now even more so when there's really a war going on.
Yeah, I know. I have a lot of friends who spent part of yesterday in their bomb shelters, and
Really?
it's been, now we have this whole situation with Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the north is, horribly compromised. 100,000 displaced people within Israel. Hezbollah firing indiscriminately at Jews Arabs, Muslims, Druze, Christian, they don't care. Um, it's just, oh, and do you remember like in the, it's probably still the case, but in like the Intifada days, if you left a backpack sitting over
Yeah.
somewhere and walked away,
They
it's like an
jump on
event.
it, yeah.
Like, um,
It's
it's,
a shame that the world has changed so much into that evil. But, evil is evil, and people kill. I mean, I just, in World War II, it's not like, well, the Germans, they hated the Jews. True. But you know how many tens of millions of other peoples were killed during the war also. So evil is evil. It's not, it's just like they always say the Jews are the
the
canary
canary in the coal
coal
mine.
mine, because
It's-
yes, it's against the Jews, but it's going to be everybody else. Like you're saying, they can fight the Arabs, and they fight on themselves. That Israel, they're screaming at Israel, you killed a few civilians. Well, I mean, you let these people govern you.
It's a horrible tragedy. Nobody deserves to live with this kind of horrible violence, terror. It's fascism, theocracy. It's terrifying, and nobody deserves it. And I don't think any sane person could want it. And I'm just kind of astonished by how many people in the West seem to misunderstand that, like, the ideologies at play here, and want to make it into some simple binary thing that they can kind of like pick a side on. It's just a bizarre dynamic. And you bring up World War II. Yes, there was unquestionably evil involved. The Nazis were evil, but the relationship between evil and just kind of stupidity and complicity, and sort of wanting to be on a winning team, and the sort of herd mentality, human behavior of just kind of like, well, what's the thing to say these days? I'll say that. That's
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, again, you're talking about college campuses where hopefully these people, I mean, they are educated. You have to have some kind of degree of intelligence to get into college. Yeah. Well, we could talk about that another time. But well, you're right, but there is the morals and ethics, or like you're saying, it's cool, that's the cool thing. We want to decide what's right or wrong and investigate it. Like I say, I don't know, not everybody's going to go to Israel and figure it out, but at least you can read about it. What do you want Israel to do? 1,000 people are killed. Well, why are you making war? Well, what are you supposed to do? Take it, and people are against you. I mean, does it make, like you say, any sense? Now Israel's evil?
Well, if you look at this conflict has gone on for not just, the last 75 years, but the last 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000. I mean, it's written in our books. We know this conflict inside and out. And if you're honest, like, you can say that, okay, well, Israel has started 0 wars. Israel has said, great, let's divide the land, 1947. We'll take this malarial, swampy shithole, pardon my French. Great, let's move on. Neighboring Arab state with equal landmass. Wonderful. Namaste. Like, I'm not saying that in every town and village there was all happy dancing, and I'm sure there were, problems between neighbors here and there, as always in the world, but, like, that could have been the end of the story. That could have been the end of the story. If in 1948, X many neighboring Arab countries hadn't waged a war on this fledgling Jewish state simply because they did not want Jews in the land at all. It's not.
There's room enough for everybody, like they
yeah.
always say.
Golda Meir said it really well, many times, but she said this is not a conflict about territory or land. This is about our right to exist at all. And you have a lot of people in the West, people I used to, consider my buddies and my sort of progressive circles, who are like, well, why do the Jews have to live there? Like, maybe everything would be easier if the Jews could all just leave, and then we wouldn't have any violence. Like,
There'd be violence anyway. I mean, but in any case, you were a writer, as we introduced you, and since you're a writer, you know how to write, and you do write to the many to many vehicles and media, and the story has gotten around literally the world, because I think even the Times of Israel in Israel about tell us the story. Let you tell the story what happened with you.
It's been a shit sandwich, if I may. I won't swear anymore. I was set to moderate a panel at the book festival nearby here in Albany, and the two of the three people who were supposed to be on that panel, novelists, and the panel was supposed to be about coming of age. So nothing to do with Israel or the war or the conflict. And two out of the three panelists tried to have me removed, said they were not comfortable. They didn't feel safe with me because I'm a Zionist. And when the institution running the show said, no, we're not going to replace her, that would be a violation of the American Civil Rights Act. The two panelists said, okay, well, we're not coming. I've never met these people. I don't know them. They don't know me. They don't know my feelings, my politics, my opinions. Like, they know, like, a few things I've written. They were apparently very threatened by, like, my tone, which tends to be very lyrically angry and kind of darkly comedic, which, fascists don't tend to have a great sense of humor. And so the institute running the festival kind of capitulated in a very cowardly way and just said, well, we're going to cancel it and move on. And they thought I would kind of go quietly, and they thought wrong.
Yeah, mess with the wrong person.
I don't feel like it was an option for me to go quietly. I can sympathize with and imagine many other people not wanting to make a fuss, but for me at this point in this situation after this year, there was just no way I was gonna like slink off into the shadows in embarrassment and shame. It's been a really stressful few days, and it's not fun, but like, hineni.
No, I totally respect you, and I know the situation. Yeah, it's easier to just, like I say, just go into your hole and remove yourself, and no one would say a word anymore. And now you're up front. But I give you the kudos, of course, because it has to be said. It's a violation. First of all, like say you're not safe. I mean, what do they think you're going to do? Bring out an Uzi and shoot anybody?
I mean, like, words are very powerful, and I know that I wield them powerfully, which is kind of my reason for being, I think.
Well, you're an author.
It's my work. I mean, it's my. Well, maybe I have other reasons for being, but it's what I do. It's my tool. It's my. And I know that it can be very threatening because in the past, about many subjects that I've addressed in my work that are much less pitched than war, I've been told certain people feel very like affronted by my tone, which I just find kind of funny. If you can't take the heat, there's a lot of books in this library that, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't quite, push the button quite so hard, but I'm really proud of my work. I just wish that, I wish that this sort of burden could be shared, in a bigger way. I get a lot of messages from people saying like, wow, I'm thinking of you. I'm so glad you're saying what you're saying. I could never do it, but I'm so glad you're doing it. And I appreciate it, but like, come on, step up.
Well, again, that's what a leader is. I mean, a leader sometimes takes one person to lead. So you're the one over here. You made it.
I kind of need a nap. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's good that you're saying. I think it's excellent. I mean, again, I'm giving you kudos too. But it's important to be said because that a person that especially now. I mean, you could always say that 10, 20, 30 years ago, and people would accept it. All right, Israel, and like Oldemir also said, if I'm using my own word, nebush. Nebush in Yiddish means like a loser. Like when Israel, oh look, 6 million Jews died. Oh, the poor Jews, the Holocaust. Isn't that a shame? Yeah, but when you're the Golda Meir, when we were a winner, like she's after 6-Day War, and now you own the Sinai, the whole West Bank, and ooh, now you're a real country. Ooh, then now you're not so.
Those uppity
you know,
Jews
Yeah,
insisting on their own survival. What nasty people they are. Why don't they
Yeah.
just go quietly? I mean, this has been going on for a
Thousands of
long
years.
time.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's nothing new, really. It's same old, same old. And really, and it's interesting because I said it before. People say, "Well, I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm anti-Zionist." And it's cute because again, I think the Holocaust still is over. People said, even though it's 80 years old already, but to say you're anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, still doesn't ring with people. But this is something else. This is something else. Well, what do you want 7 million Jews in Israel to do over here? Like you said, leave or get destroyed or get beat up.
Just get killed. Like,
yeah.
okay, let's.
Yeah,
We're
what do
fine
you
here
expect?
in New York, so whatever. I'm good. Sorry for them, but
But I think it's the canary also, as we talked about, because the anti-Semitism, those are the statistics, has been raised by hundreds of percent. Once, again, it's a Torah idea where Amalek in the Chumash, is a small little tribe, and Israel just beat up Egypt, which was, even the grammar school books, elementary schools, it's a major empire, and they beat them up. So I call them nomadic nobodies. How are you going to mess with these people? But they did. But once the Rashi says that, the commentaries say that, they hurt the Jews, or Chapin, again I'm using my Yiddish, bother the Jews, then it becomes an in for everybody else. It's the same thing. How can Palestinians go against Israel? They don't have one tank. They don't have one plane. And Egypt won't bother them. Jordan, these are real countries with real armed forces. How do you think you're going to beat them up?
terrorism.
And,
Terrorism.
you
I mean,
know,
it's
but
and they're
it's
being
evil.
used. I mean, I think the Palestinian people deserve better. I think the Palestinian people must find a way to get out from under the yoke of this oppressive sort of proxy situation where they are being used, and their blood is cheap, and it's just a hideous situation. There's no reason, if you've spent any time in Israel, there's no reason why everybody can't do their own thing and have a beautiful life. There's resources for everybody. If we could drop this ideological garbage where it's this cosmic grudge that goes back and back and back, and this kind of pride and honor and all these yucky sort of mythological violent fantasies, we could all live a beautiful life.
Yeah, it goes even further than that. Israel does try to help, to the Arabs in their own land, and even in Gaza, send food and send medical equipment. They bend over backwards, if you want to say, just saying, see, we are nice. And, to get spit in the face, that's what happens a lot of times. There are a lot of Arabs that do like Israel, we should say that.
Sure. Oh, yeah. And there's
And-
2 million Arabs living in Israel as
Yeah.
Israelis with full civil rights.
Yeah, we should say that.
Of
It's
course.
not absolute. But it's like you're saying, I could say that about a lot of dictatorships in Iran and North Korea. The people, they make, North Korea are bad people, but they're decent people. It's just the governments to use out these people
Right.
terribly. So same thing is here also. The people are good if you leave them be,
They can be good if they're,
Yeah.
it's going to take a few generations to sort of walk back some of the miseducation that's been foisted upon them. They're taught, if you look at these school books in Gaza, that have been found in private homes, toys and children's books, and it's if I kill one Jew and you kill one Jew, how many Jews have we killed? It's so deeply entrenched systemically in how people are being shaped from birth, and that's the tragedy to me. How do we get to a point? If it takes a generation, if it takes 2 generations, look, we're dealing with that in this country. People in parts of this country were educated for years to think it was normal that you had a colored drinking fountain and a white person drinking fountain. It took a generation to start to just really confront it and walk it back. We're not done yet, but we haven't even begun the process properly
In
yet.
Israel.
And I don't know, of course it's gonna take everybody's cooperation. It's a dream that it could even be possible, but that's what it's gonna take. And until we get to that point, there's just gonna be blood and blood and blood and blood. And nobody wants that,
Yeah, I
except
know
for the
that-
people who want it.
Yeah, the dictators, and they control people. I have one Israeli who lives in here in Bethlehem, and he was in Sava, which means the Israeli army, and it was like years ago, because he's been here for 25 years, and he said, I was in Gaza having coffee with Arabs,
Yeah.
and no one thought twice about
Totally.
it. It's not
Before
like-
2005,
Yeah.
it was an open border. It was like there were 17,000 Jews living in Gaza in
Yeah.
2005, and they had to be forcibly removed by the Israeli government as part of a land for peace. We're gonna take all. Okay, like, guess what? You don't want us here. We'll take every last Jew out of here. You can have your Gaza, Jew free. Let's live in peace. Let's move on.
And you see what happened.
So many, I've seen photographs from 2005 when the IDF was forcibly removing Jews from Gaza who did not want to leave.
Yeah.
And it's tragic. You have crying soldiers and crying people carried out. There were $15 million worth of greenhouses in Gaza
Really?
that the Jews had set up. Huge industry. They left them. They were destroyed within days, just for the sake of destruction.
Yeah. Well, we only have a minute left. It was very enlightening to talk to you because, again, I always like talking to first-hand people. You can talk in America, which, we can talk the right thing. But if you're there, it's another story. That's why I say a Holocaust survivor, or, they were there, and you were there in Israel on October 7th. You saw and you know about the real situation, what's happening. But, again, we should end up with, like you say, a blessing for peace in Israel. That's what we all want. And, even I don't know if sometimes the media thinks that the Israelis are ready to beat up every Arab, which is not true.
Peace.
We're just looking for
Peace.
peace. Israel's looking for peace. That would be the biggest dream for them. But you got to defend yourself also. You can't just sit down and let 1,000, even 1,200 Israelis get killed and
I don't
and
know.
it'd be
I
a
don't-
terrible situation.
I hope I never find out, but I don't know what I would do if somebody broke into my home and tried to kill me,
No.
I mean,
Hopefully not.
that's in the Talmud, isn't it? Like,
For sure, you have to protect yourself.
a
It's not
very
passism.
a very wise rabbi once told me you have to turn curses into blessings.
That's a beautiful idea.
It was you.
Yeah, and that's it. We'll end up on that note. That it should be the theme of what we're talking about. All the problems should turn into blessings for us, the Jewish people, and the entire world. Thank you very much, Elisa, for being on the Jewish View.